Home to nearly 200,000 people, Dorset's seaside metropolis of Bournemouth continues to grow its cosmopolitan community. Yet just beyond the shores of its 11 miles of golden sands lies the ever-growing barrier between the UK and the rest of Europe. In June 2016, a referendum on whether or not to remain in the EU divided Britain, as just over half of the country voted leave. Bournemouth exactly mirrored that outcome. Immigration issues were a huge factor, yet Bournemouth's economy is directly linked to its diversity. Here, 16% of the population is ethnic, and 11% of its university students are international. Tourism alone brings in £85.8 million from overseas visitors. The rolling pastures surrounding Bournemouth's cityscape are home to another important economic force, the farmers, who produce £112 million for Dorset's economy. So how do farmers, students, and the area's livelihood from diversification fare in a non-EU Britain? This is Bournemouth versus Brexit.
If there is one thing that has become abundantly clear from discussions on farming in a post-Brexit economy, it is that politicians and farmers do not agree on what is best for the industry. Even though 55% of farmers' income came from Europe's common agricultural policy payments, the increase in the number of farmers from the EU entering the CAP diluted economic support to the UK, a reason which led to more than half of British farmers voting leave. The National Farmers Union itself trod the neutral path, whilst still hoping to remain. This is because Michael Gove's Green Brexit completely does away with EU basic payments and relies upon developing trade deals with non-EU countries. But farmers rely heavily on EU seasonal workers, and there is already a decline in the number of workers willing to come to the UK.
The Dorset area of outstanding natural beauty says 77% of the area is farmland and 11% is woodland. So how does all of this affect Bournemouth?
Bournemouth and Poole and the Purbecks rely enormously on tourism, and people really value the natural environment around here. There is talk of maybe creating a national park here, because people feel this is such a beautiful area, and it is an absolutely exquisite area. We're very privileged to live here, but that beautiful area is all to do with the farmed environment. I mean, what we as farmers are creating or being custodians of. So, number one, tourism has a huge debt of gratitude almost to farmers for making this place so beautiful and looking after it. Brexit's been very interesting for the farming community, because I think that generally in the farming community it's accepted that Brexit will be very damaging to farming, but the majority of farmers in actual fact voted for Brexit. Perhaps there was some sort of anti-immigration thing, which is a daft thing, because in actual fact farming really, there's a lot of farmers who really value the help of European migrants. I met a fascinating woman the other day, and she was telling me how she had set up a little fruit farm. She's been doing this for over 30 years now, and she has employed 3 generations of Romanians from one particular village in Romania, and she has about 40 of them on her farm, not throughout the year, but for about 9 months of the year. And she was telling me she doesn't know how she's going to manage without this connection she has with Romania and these people who come in and work on her fruit farm. She has tried to employ local people, and they simply don't survive a week. The agricultural industry will tell you that across a broad spectrum of employment, we are just simply not producing the people either with the right qualifications or the right attitude or the right work ethic.
Well, the younger generation are not very happy with what's going on with Brexit. A lot of people feel like it was the older people who decided to, they wanted to leave Europe, because when they were young, they weren't part of Europe, and the UK seemed to do quite well. But a lot of people are trying to embrace it, saying that it would increase the amount of trade within the UK because we won't have so much from Europe coming in. I've got a friend up the road who produces cider, and it means that he won't have to meet as many European regulations. A lot of people are trying to not eat meat, which is produced locally in the UK, and they want all their nuts and fruit, which I agree with is good for you, but you're also then importing something from Africa or South America, and so it takes a lot of fuel just to get it from there to here, and over there it's probably not farmed sustainably because they don't have to meet all the regulations that we have to meet here.
I mean, the good thing about this, though, of course, in terms of Brexit, is this actually is giving a sort of good, solid financial base to our farm, because this will not be affected by Brexit. So whereas our cattle over the other side, it could well be that quite soon we'll have imported beef from America, from South America, from goodness only knows where. Well, here we are with some brand new calves that were born last night. Now, these calves won't reach maturity until they're 2.5 years old. So, in common with all farmers, we're making very long-term investments, and this is another problem with Brexit. We don't know what's happening from one day to the next, let alone 1 week to the next, or a month to the next, or a year to the next. But we're making decisions about future investment that may be 3 or 4 years in advance. And we really need to have some clear direction, because we cannot invest in our businesses unless we know where we're going with this.
Bournemouth holds the largest number of language schools outside of London, and the International Education Forum brings in over £300 million to the local economy. Of the 17,000 students who attend Bournemouth University alone, 2,000 are from outside the UK. That is 11%, and 5% of all students are directly from the EU.
3/4 of the university's income comes from tuition fees. Following the results of Brexit, there has already been a 7% decline in EU applications across England. But what is more shocking is the 5% decline in UK applications, the first drop since 2012.
Only 64% of registered 18 to 24-year-olds actually voted, compared to a whopping 82% turnout in over 50s. This is critical because 60% of 50 and over voted leave. So do young people only have themselves to blame for the referendum's outcome?
It's not really a problem of the young generation. I kind of feel like it's more of a misunderstanding that the old generation has of the young generation. That's what I kind of experienced. So I've never experienced any negative thoughts on the EU from like people my age or people in their 30s. Even my friend who lives here in Bournemouth, there was this older man who stopped her, and she's from Malaysia, and he told her, I don't like Chinese, and she's not even Chinese, she's from Malaysia, but like putting everything in one pot and kind of like still living in a different century and not being open-minded.
Are you worried about your future career path here in England now because of Brexit?
I have to admit I am, just because I think that just the uncertainty that is right there. I think I literally didn't expect it to happen. Like, I don't know, it's just like, it was like, we just thought it's a joke or something went wrong with counting the votes or something like that.
I think what Brexit has done is made people feel that they have to put themselves into categories. I'm from here, I'm from there, and sort of make units of themselves. But I think they're not doing it to be negative or to upset anybody else. I think it's a form of protection. The issue with EU students studying at Bournemouth University, particularly any degrees that lead to a medical career, is that they study it to work in England. So once I am accredited by the British Psychological Society, it will be very difficult to then re-qualify to work somewhere else. What happens for all those people that they want them to leave, but now they've studied here, they took the student loans out, that the money's going back to the government, but it will be difficult for them to find jobs later on outside of England.
I cried. I'm not gonna lie, I cried. I don't even know if there was a reason for me to cry or not, but it was just a shock that I wasn't expecting. I really wasn't expecting that. I feel like I was living in a place where people didn't want me, basically. That's how I feel. That's why it was such a shock for me. Some people actually apologized to me because they didn't vote, and after that they realized they might have done it because they could have made a difference, probably. So I don't really get all this anger against internationals, really. We come here for working or for studying, so I don't see the point. It's not that we're coming here for stealing or destroying the country. Or I don't know. I really don't get it. I don't see the problem, honestly.
One of the main reasons for the EU referendum was to bring about greater control of immigration. According to the Office of National Statistics, non-EU migration has increased, while the number of EU citizens arriving in the UK has fallen since 2016. 130,000 EU citizens left the UK last year, the sharpest drop in a decade. All the same, more than 90 million overseas visitors come to London each year. Around 270 nationalities make up the fabric of the capital, and over 300 languages are spoken, more than any other city in the world, according to Project Britain. Does the push towards nationalism among Leave voters do Britain a disservice? Could Bournemouth's pro-Brexit stance make internationals feel unwelcome?
Bournemouth University, which is also in my constituency, is amongst one of the most international universities in the UK. So I see Brexit as being an opportunity to be even more internationalist, in the sense that from now on we won't have to discriminate against the rest of the world because we have no control of those numbers coming from within the European Union. We can come up with an immigration system that allows us to attract the brightest and the best, regardless of where they come from in the world. Students are not immigrants. They are visitors. They pay to come here. They benefit our local economy. They benefit our country culturally with the diversity that they bring to the United Kingdom. So I would like to see the government move to remove them from the international migration figures. Other countries such as United States, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, even the Republic of Ireland, they understand the benefits of international students. When these people come from the world over and they're exposed to our way of life, our free expression, freedom of speech, free press, freedom under a rule of law, market economies, they will go back in years to come to their home countries and they will rise to the positions of leadership that their education will have equipped them for, and they will become ambassadors for Britain. There's a danger with this argument of dismissing those who are older, but those who are older had the experience of living in Britain before we entered the European Economic Community, having seen how it evolved and where it was heading to. So you could equally argue that the older people had more experience.
So do you think in the way where they have more experience and that's why they voted that way, whereas young people didn't understand, do you also think that there's a possibility that the older generation don't understand the younger generation's needs?
I think the younger generation are somewhat bedazzled by not the institutions of the European Union, but what the sort of the liberal press view of it is, that it is sort of impossible to be of good values, of good intent, internationalist, globalist, compassionate, and be in favour of leaving the European Union. It's the point that my boss, Boris Johnson, the Foreign Secretary, was trying to make. There's a form of Brexit that is not a UKIP Faragist form of Brexit, that it's not Britain leaving the European Union, it's Britain rejoining the rest of the world. And you look at the massive opportunities for future economic growth in Latin America and Brazil and Chile and Argentina. You look at the opportunities of free trade deals with the United States. You look at the massive growth potential of India and of China. You look at the potential of the Commonwealth for us to re-engage in trading relationships there. I think young people will see over the years that this is a massive opportunity for them, not to be tied to, as it were, little Europe, but to be a player in a truly global economy. The polls don't point to any groundswell of opinion. There was one poll out today I saw that 48% oppose a second referendum, just over 30% thought another referendum was a good idea, and there were a number undecided. Look, it's settled. I think it would be actually very dangerous indeed if, having gone through the referendum that both sides conceded during the course of that campaign, the outcome of which would be respected, for the establishment, if you like, to then try and find a way to circumnavigate that and actually keep us in. I think it would be a hammer blow to the concept of faith in democracy in the United Kingdom. We now need to do what the British are always very good at, which is adapting and resetting our course and making the best of the opportunities that it presents.
Ultimately, there is still division in Britain over Brexit, but the tides are somewhat turning as more and more people come to terms with the reality of what this divorce may mean. With some pushing for a second referendum before the Brexit bill becomes law, it could yet be turned on its head. The signs are encouraging in terms of being able to reach agreements to protect the rights of EU citizens in the UK. There is also a glimmer of hope for free trade deals and the retention of human rights. But will this be enough to assure the economy of Bournemouth and maintain its positive environment for international students and migrant workers?